Well, I'm excited to speak to you guys. As she said, my daughter goes to Salem, and I have we've got Leslie, who's our outreach coordinator. She's got 4 kids who go to Salem, and so you know, the Lutheran school system is. It exemplifies something that does need to change in districts as a whole. And when I see the work that it's done on my daughter, it is absolutely amazing. And as I speak to you today, I'm tweaking it a little bit because I'm not at an individual site. You guys all have your own schools, and I'm going to depend on some of your participation today, okay? Help me help you, right? That's a famous line. And so when I think of the Lutheran school system, you guys have a system at each school, a system as a whole. You have support. I know you have your issues, and I know not everybody's always happy all the time, but overall, you guys have systems in place. You have values that are similar, and you have morals that are in check. Now, why am I talking about that? Because there's a certain posture, there is a certain culture that makes it more likely that adults, parents, staff, administration, teachers can deal with dysregulation. And right now, as a whole in society right now, we are an absolute mess when it comes to mental health and diagnosis. We don't know what we're doing. No offense to anybody, but we don't know what we're doing. What we do know, though, is that there is more dysregulation than there ever was before. What we know is that you guys feel like your hands are tied. You don't know what to do, right? You might say something and then be canceled. You might do something with really great intentions and then get told that you're causing damage. Now, our kids are really resilient. I know that sometimes you get like the wrath from parents or people above you. And so today, I want you to leave with some peace. Okay? You are making an incredible difference in these people's lives, these little people's lives, whether you are a counselor or a teacher or whoever you might be. And you are not causing damage as you grow in your role and your understanding. And so I'm here not to give you, does everybody know what CBT is? CBT is like this really cool concept in mental health and therapy and psychology. It's one of the first things you learn. I am not going to give you any CBT today, okay? CBT is really powerful when you have what? Does anybody know what CBT works for? Right? And they're really great books to read, right? Because they make you feel like, oh man, I can go home, I can implement that, I can put it on I can write it down. We've got, like, especially if you're a teacher, you've got an assignment for the next 2 months. But who does CBT work with? Why am I not teaching CBT today? Yes. CBT works for people who are motivated and want the help, right? I know you guys are counselors and administrators. Has anybody ever tried to give a resistant child an assignment here? Right? That's why CBT doesn't work. Man, when I have a really motivated client who's begging me for help and they come in, I'm going, yes, we can get this done in like a month. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of CBT exercises, pay me half the thing because I don't need to do much. Go read a book. But the challenge is, how do I deal with a dysregulated person who's not motivated to become regulated? That's a whole different question, and that's a whole different issue. And so I hope you leave here more at peace and maybe more equipped to start a discussion with your schools, because you guys are from all different schools, and I love that. I hope when you leave here, this can begin conversations. This is not going to end whatever issues you might be having at your each individual schools. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you'll be at a school and things are going swimmingly and everybody's getting along and you have little problems over here, but they get squashed really quickly and you're going along thinking, look, all the parents love us. We are the light of the community. Everybody knows about our school because nobody's causing a problem, and then boom, your school gets hit like a wildfire with problem. with children who are not regulated, and you don't know why. And a lot of school systems will start looking to blame, or they'll start looking to defend themselves. And the fact is you don't know when or how your school is going to be overcome by dysregulation. And it catches like wildfire, man. It spreads into the teachers, it spreads, right? You can have like 3 kids in an entire school system who cannot be regulated, who maybe have parents who you don't want to make angry. I know you guys know what that's like, okay? And you don't want to make them angry, and then the whole culture changes. And so I want to equip you guys to deal with whatever season you're in with your school. Does that make sense? We're going to get you ready for my presentation with the Serenity Prayer, okay? It is like the most used prayer. You heard that I'm in addiction. That's why I am so familiar with it. And but I think that this is a really good start to the work that we're going to do here today. So I'm going to read it, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to really think about what this prayer is setting us up for. What is it speaking to us? Because I don't care if you're of faith or not, this is one of the most powerful things that has ever been written down in the history of humankind, right? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. Taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will. That I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. This mindset sets the foundation for successful emotional regulation and de-escalation. Okay? Now I'm going to give you a concept right now, and I want you guys to take it in like you've never taken anything in before. Okay? And I'm not just speaking about dysregulated children, by the way, okay? There are dysregulated adults that you guys deal with all the time. The principles don't change, I promise. Now, here's the concept, okay? Is everybody ready for this? Raise your hand if you vow to take this as the most important thing you learned today. Okay. Don't take it personally. Okay? On the count of 3, I want everybody to say, I promise to not take it personally. What's that like to say? What's it like to say, I promise to not take it personally? What first comes to mind? Okay? Can I really do it? Yeah. Right? I mean, read the prayer. This prayer says it's not about you. It's not about supreme happiness right now. Right? What's it like for you to say out loud? I recently had a client tell me what a terrible therapist I was. And this person was very angry because they did not hear what they wanted to hear. And I agree with them. They were not getting better. My work does not change based on the feedback I get from my clients. I know that sounds wild as a therapist, but I do good work. I do research-based therapy. And your emotional state in the moment and your assessment of me is something I might consider, put in the back of my head. But what I will not do is take that personally, because then I will do bad work. I will become what's called a life coach. And I am not a life coach. I am a therapist. You guys are in the school system. Your counselors, your administrators, people. Sometimes you make mistakes and it is your fault. Don't take that personally. Sometimes somebody blames you and it's not your fault. Don't take that personally. Sometimes somebody has an absolute breakdown in front of you. Don't take that personally. You have a job to do. And I think therapists, those of us who are in the helping professions, we forget that it is still a job. And if you do not take that posture of, this is my job, I am not going to take it personally. if you do not take that posture of, I am going to focus on the things that I can control and let go of the things that I cannot control, you will fail in your job. I know I'm not supposed to use that word very often, but you will fail as a part of the school system. Your role in the school that you're at, you will fail if you're taking it personally. You will fail if you're trying to control things that aren't yours to control. You will fail if you forget that this is a job. I know it's a calling too. It's still a job. What's that like to hear? I love that. Thank you for saying that. And I have a feeling, because you guys were going, when I treat it like a job, I don't feel like I'm living out my calling. I get that. No offense, but you're wrong. Your calling is to do a job with the love and care that your value system, your faith dictates. It doesn't change your duty to do your job. In fact, if you don't remember that it's a job, you are not fulfilling that calling. Okay? And that's really important because you each have a role. You are not the school system. You are not that child's parent. You are not Jesus Christ. You are not the giver of everything they need for life. You are one point in time, and you have a role, you have a duty, and remembering that is going to help you keep you from becoming dysregulated. Dysregulation comes from little decisions that you've made, your own dysregulation. Being able to de-escalate means that you are coming from a place of not taking it personally. You're coming from a place of controlling the things that you can control. Make sense? Okay, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to disagree with you without becoming dysregulated yourself. Okay, so I want to tell you what this presentation is and is not, okay? This is not a lesson in deep breathing. This is not mindfulness training. Like I said, it's not CBT techniques. These are valuable, okay? But what we are going to do is explore mindset and posture like we've already begun. Okay, we want to understand behavior better. The more you understand, the more you can let go of the things you cannot control, and the more you can get focused on what you can control. And the more likely you are to not take it, what? Personally. Okay? And then here's where the job comes in. It is your job, every single person in the school system, to have plans and to respond intentionally. What's the opposite of responding intentionally? Reactively, emotionally. Okay? It is my job as an adult to keep my emotions in check. Now, why as an adult can I get my emotions, or should I be able to get my emotions in check? Does anybody know? So the way that we envision is that our frontal lobes finally connected. It doesn't really look like that. It's this mess of, all these really cool connections. But at the end of the day, our frontal lobe, technically, given that we didn't do a whole bunch of drugs and we didn't get knocked in the head and we didn't experience things that would cause us failure to thrive, our frontal lobes are supposed to be completed in its development. And what's the frontal lobe? What's one of the functions of the frontal lobe? It regulates everything, right? It is this station for everything going on in the brain to slow down, stop, and become more reasonable. Okay? Right? Everybody remembers that whole story of the railroad tie going through the guy's frontal lobe, and then he couldn't, right? If you took basic psychology, you remember that. Look, your frontal lobes. Now, what's going on with the children we're seeing, even in the 18-year-olds, the children that we are serving? Theirs isn't fully developed, but isn't it interesting that as adults, we think we relate to kids because we'll get goofy every once in a while, right? It's so funny because some of these parents or teachers or coaches that I deal with, they insist that they're so good with kids because they can be goofy, and that everybody can be goofy. But when you're coming from a place of, I'm not going to take it personally, and I'm going to remember the developmental stage of the children I am serving. You are already light years ahead of most adults that I work with. I know. I want to set the foundation for your internal framework. Okay, now you see, like, I'm already not giving you any cool, really big tricks, that you can go and say, look at this. This is like some hard work. This takes honesty. How have I handled dysregulation in the past? I want to hear from some of you guys. I want you guys to ask yourself, not just in your role as administrators and school professionals, but overall, how have I handled dysregulation in the past? Now, there's two types of dysregulation, your own and other people's. Okay? How have I handled dysregulation in the past? I'll go first. My default is to get real loud, real big, and real defensive. What's funny about me is I'm scary, but I forget and I move on and you stew and you got a smile on your face, but you're resenting, probably get some stomach issues, right? Yeah. And you bring up a good point, right? We handle things differently based on our own moods, which isn't okay, by the way. All right? That isn't okay. I'll forgive you. I'm still going to tell you to your face that was wrong. Okay? Because it is a job and a role that we are playing, which means that we have to compartmentalize. And we'll talk more about that. I like that. And most of us go, oh, that's good. That's always good. That is sometimes good. I don't know you, but there's some pitfalls with that if you're not careful. I'm a verbal processor too. And sometimes it's healthy, and sometimes I realize, oh. Now here's the problem. There's this myth in anger management. And it is that we need to get our feelings out. I bet you guys buy that. I bet you've taught that before. We need to get our feelings out, whether it's punching a punching bag or it's talking, right? I mean, parents send me clients all the time, their kids all the time saying they need to talk. And they're very confused and they go somewhere else when I say they don't need to talk. You need to shut your mouth. But here's the thing. There's this myth in anger management. And it says that we need to get our feelings out. We need to get our feelings out. And that is fine. There is some truth to that under a lot of situations and circumstances. But when it comes to anger management, so let's say that she wants to process because she's so angry that her principal instituted this new thing. And that principal just doesn't understand because this new process in the classroom is making the kids dysregulated, and that's ruining her whole day. And she can't teach what she needs to teach when she wants to teach it. What happens is the more she talks through that and out, she feels better because there's this whole dopamine and serotonin kick that's going on. But what it's not doing is solving a problem, bringing positivity to her culture, her life, and her mindset. What it's not doing is regulating her. It's making her feel good. There is a big difference between I feel good because I'm getting it out, right? I've got a punching bag in my garage. Man, when I hit that thing, it feels great. What it doesn't do is make me more likely to be zen later on in the day. It exhausts me. If I hit it angrily, I'm going to be more angry down the road. If I hit it because I want to get exhausted, I'm going to get exhausted and be more regulated. You have a duty to know how much to talk about it, how much negativity is coming out as you process it. Me processing with you, hey man, I'm really struggling with these new processes that the principal has implemented. And me saying, do you mind talking me through it? Let me tell you what my thoughts are. Do you hear the tone in my voice? That is processing. Can you believe that freaking principal? Once again, she doesn't know what she's doing. Now I am becoming more and more dysregulated. And what am I doing? I'm infecting others around me. Another question. Is what I'm doing working, and how do I know that it's working? That's a pretty big question. Isn't it funny how many things we do, especially when it comes to regulating children, helping them de-escalate, that we just do because we think it should work? But is what I'm doing working, and how do I know? Any thoughts to that? Sometimes what you think should be working isn't working, and it's obvious because you're dealing with the dysregulated child who's not becoming more regulated. They aren't de-escalating, right? Now, it's not always possible to de-escalate every child. There's some signs that what you're doing isn't working and that what you're doing is making it worse, right? How do I know that it's working? How do I know that what I'm doing with my own dysregulation or the dysregulation of children around me is working? Who cares if they feel better? You guys, if I was up here to teach you how to make your dysregulated children feel better, I would fail. You would go home thinking I'm brilliant, and then you would try to implement some things and think that I am psychobabble. They might not. Let's hope. Yeah. So you guys are talking about the hopes. Here's how you know. You have reduced the chaos. You have reduced the disruption. That's it. They might not change. The reducing the disruption might be that they are not in the classroom at all. It might be that they're still throwing their temper tantrum and you didn't participate and add your 50% of the chaos. I don't know. See, if I tell you the way that you know that you're doing the right thing when it comes to de-escalation is that your child that's in front of you de-escalates, I'm setting you up for failure 50% of the time, maybe more. You can cease from perpetuating their dysregulation. And what adults don't understand is that a lot of times what you brought to the table made it worse. I can help you not make it worse. You can really assess, did I stop bringing 50% of the chaos to the table? Sure, I'll give you an example. Do you mind if I give you a parenting example, since that's what I want you to imagine that a day in and day out, a parent's trying to get their dysregulated, angry child to school. And every single morning, they go in and they wake that child up, and the child rolls over and is disrespectful. And they go, hurry up, you gotta go to school, you're gonna be late. And that child yells back, leave me alone, we're never late. And then it just keeps escalating and they're fighting. And then the kid turns to the mom when they are late and says, it's your fault, you're the one who yelled at me all morning. Forget it, I'm not going to school. And then the parent yells, if you don't go to school, you're going to fail, you're going to become a loser, you're going to become a drug addict. Now, I want you to imagine that the parent realizes, wow, I have done this every day for 3 years. And they went to one of my parenting groups. And instead of participating in the chaos all morning, they went in and said, it's time for school. And the kid didn't get up. And that parent went, I need a break anyways, and they made the best cup of coffee that Keurig can offer, and they put their hazelnut creamer in it, and they had just cleaned their backyard, so they sat out in the backyard until their kid came downstairs. And they were still late. There's still a problem. The kid doesn't want to go to school on time. But nothing was said, but that mother or that father sat and drank an amazing cup of coffee, didn't participate in the yelling, and went to school realizing I cannot control my child who is defiant going to school on time. Did I fix the problem? Nope, sure didn't. What I did was I removed 50% or more of the chaos in the home. Now, some parents or administrators or teachers are going to say, well, you can't do that. It is your job to make sure that you pounce on every single teachable moment with the children. No, it's not. It is your job to influence them in the long run. As administrators, as teachers, as parents, it is your job to walk alongside these children. It is not your job to walk for them. Therefore, my assessment is, did I remove my end of the chaos? Can I be proud of how I behaved? Did I cause more damage? Or did I finally stop myself from causing more damage? And that's parents, teachers, administrators, counselors. We all get frustrated with these children who become dysregulated or defiant or angry, right? Yes, 100%. I want the quick fix will never work. That's why I told you in the beginning, I'm not setting you guys up to go home with quick fixes or CBT exercises. This is a perspective shift. This is a using the tools, culture, the things that you have already, focusing on what you have control of. Okay. The next question to get your internal framework really set is, are my responses aligned with my morals, values, and faith? Isn't it amazing how easy it is to go outside our morals, values, and faith when we're trying to fix something, when we don't want to experience chaos? Many of you are parents, you all signed up to work with kids. Guess what? You do not get to become exempt from the chaos that comes from loving children. You will not fix all the issues. There aren't fixes to most of the issues. Your desire to have a fix to everything is part of the problem. You cannot be a good de-escalator if that is your goal. Not going to happen. Okay, so are my responses aligned with my morals, values, and faith? That goal is so much more attainable than can I fix the issues that are in front of me? I can reach that 100%. I cannot fix all the issues in front of me. What is the true goal during emotional escalation? I'm going to ask you guys, what's the goal during emotional escalation, yours or the children's? To de-escalate the child, right? Yeah. The goal is usually to make things calm. Now, that's fine, but that isn't always the goal. I recently had an issue where my daughter was throwing kind of a temper tantrum, and I realized that my goal was just to get to bed. And she couldn't stop me from getting to bed, so what the heck was I doing right now? Right? I'm giving you a little piece so you can start thinking about what our goals really are. Okay? And then what matters most in these moments? That is my favorite question. What matters most right now? And that changes based on the circumstance and situation and person and, again, goal, time of day. It's going to change if you're in the middle of the classroom or if you're in a personal meeting with a counselor. It's going to change on a Friday when it's free dress and nobody's actually learning anything, and on a day that it's right before you're doing some sort of state tests, right? I want you to understand emotional dysregulation, and I know you do, but sometimes we mistake an adverse situation and a child being angry for dysregulation. It is not the same thing, okay? I'm gonna tell you, my daughter's name is Allie. She's amazing. She's pretty much compliant. The other day, she became completely and utterly dysregulated, and I didn't know why. And I'm watching her fall apart, and we're talking like we're going from a good moment to what is going on? What the heck, Allie? Freaking out. She throws her socks off when she gets she throws her socks off a lot anyway. She doesn't like socks. She throws them really angrily when she's angry. Is that like a thing? She's 6 years old and her socks are like a thing. But so she's crying uncontrollably. I'm trying to understand what's going on. And I kind of, it was a good moment for me. I have really bad moments in parenting. This was a good moment in parenting for me. That's why I'm sharing it. But so I just waited because I'd already asked her. I said, well, what's going on? What's wrong? And she's screaming, I don't know. Are you hurt? And she said, no, I'm not hurt. And I said, okay. Are you sad? Yes. Okay. Are you angry? Yeah, I'm angry at you. Okay. All right. And so I'm just trying to understand. She's ticked at me. She's ticked at the world. And so I just waited. There was nothing I was going to do. Right? And I waited her out and I said, really calmly when she kind of calmed down. What's going on? I don't know. Right? She'd already calmed down. And I'll never forget this. She said, Dada, can we watch the Superman show? Like it had never happened. Okay? Now I tell that story because sometimes you guys, the kids are going to get dysregulated. You're not going to figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. They're just crazy for that moment. Now, I want you to imagine in that story, you got to tell me what's wrong, Allie. What is wrong with you? There's nothing to be angry at. Can you imagine? Then I'm going to make her feel ashamed of being dysregulated. I'm going to make her feel ashamed in that moment of having big emotions. Now, I'm not, if you know me as a therapist, I rub people the wrong way because I'm not one of these fluffy therapists who thinks that your emotions matter all the time. Okay? I've had moments with my daughter where she said, but I'm sad and I don't want to and I'm feeling this and that. And I said, that's great. Now let's go. And I didn't address her feelings in that moment because it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't practical. I didn't have time for it, it wasn't going to help her, and I knew she was having those moments. But if I have the time and the moment is right, I will hear about all of your feelings. I've literally told clients, they spill their feelings to me about something, and they're like, oh, I feel like blank. And I tell them, I don't care what your feelings are. That's incorrect. Your behavior isn't going to work for anybody. And that's important. That discernment and understanding when to address feelings and when emotions don't actually matter is important. And it is like, this video goes out, I might get canceled for saying that, right? Emotions are not everything. We cannot address emotions at all times. Make sense? Okay, so here's what emotional dysregulation is, though. Intense, prolonged emotional reactions, anger, sadness, or anxiety. Intense. It isn't, I'm having the emotions. Not all anger, sadness, and anxiety is what we should be calling dysregulation. There's an intensity to it. One of the reasons that we suck at diagnosing is because we have forgotten that there's a level, we all have been distracted. We don't all have ADHD. We have all felt anxiety. We don't all have anxiety disorders. All of the children are going to get angry, sad, or anxious at times. That doesn't mean that they're dysregulated. But if you as administrators, teachers, principals, whatever, if you guys decide that anytime somebody has big emotions, they are dysregulated, you are not going to do yourself a service in being somebody who can de-escalate. If somebody's just having big emotions, guess what? Wait. It's going to wait or distract. I don't even need to I don't need to teach for that. I'll give you the answer to big emotions. Wait and distract. That's it. Dysregulation is something that's more intense. And it is important that we understand the difference. Responses that do not match the situation, that's really important, right? The story I just gave you of my daughter, it made no sense. Everything was fine. That was a moment of actual dysregulation, not because she has a mental health disorder, but because sometimes you've got to know and recognize that our kids are going to become inappropriately dysregulated. And so, and I want you to think of it this way. If I know a child's having big feelings, it's the equivalent of picking up kind of like a pan that's on the really warm side. Like, should I pick it up? Yeah, I'm good. A dysregulated child is that cast iron that's been sitting on high for the last hour while you're cooking. Don't touch that thing. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. And I think that discernment is really important for us because I don't think that we discern that. I have people come to me all the time, oh man, I was dealing with this dysregulated child, and I'm going, that's a normal, what are you talking? No, it's not. Your angst about their big emotion was the problem, not their big emotion. The disruption in functioning for the individual and others is a sign that it's actual dysregulation, right? There's a lack of functioning in all diagnosis. True diagnosis means that there is a lack of functioning going on. And I know dysregulation isn't like a diagnosis, but when you're well, since ADHD is such a huge thing, there's a difference between an ADHD child who often becomes inappropriately dysregulated and a child who's just very distractible and has big emotions sometimes, okay? There's a risk of harm to self, others, or property. Now, I'm going to define de-escalation, okay? De-escalation is reducing the intensity and preventing chaos. It is not solving the problem in the moment. Okay? De-escalation is reducing intensity and preventing chaos. It is not solving the problem in the moment. In fact, a lot of people's poor reactions to dysregulation is trying to solve it. You cannot solve the problem with a dysregulated child. That's insanity, right? Why are we trying to explain things to a dysregulated child? It's not going to work. Okay, so why do we focus on regulation and de-escalation? I'm curious with you guys. So my list is going to seem basic, but I want you to really sit with it, okay? Why focus on regulation and de-escalation, excuse me? For your own peace and control. We need you to feel peaceful. We need you to be under control. We need you to be okay. I tell parents that all the time. I need you to be okay. But you need to help my child. Yeah, but I need you to be okay. But please help my child. I get it. But you guys are in a job with a lot of people who are depending on you, not just the people sitting in front of you. The entire community is depending on you. Okay? Your peace is important. To support your peers. Right? Remember when I said it can catch like wildfire in a school system? Well, guess what? You have a responsibility to not only take care of yourself, but be proficient at de-escalation for your peers. They matter too. Even the ones you don't like, they matter. You need them. To help the struggling child. That's obvious, right? That's why most people hire me, is to help the struggling child, and that's important. To protect the learning environment for other students. As you said, look, you've got to keep functioning as an educator. We're going through this really bizarre twist and turn in schools and universities where it's almost like we forgot that the primary role and job as an educator is to educate, and we want everybody to be mental health professionals, educators, and life coaches and everything else, right? No, we got to keep that learning environment going. You have a whole bunch of dysregulated kids going off, and escalation, 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 and that learning goes down the drain. Right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard from teachers. I've had the privilege of working with a few different public school districts. We are contracted by Servite. We work with Rosary. We work with Orange Lutheran, St. John's. We work with a lot of different cultures in school, okay? And what's really interesting is that there is such a huge difference. Just this huge difference in all the cultures, right? And so one of the reasons we want regulation and de-escalation is to protect the culture and the future of the institution, which means you got to be really good at learning and educating, right? And so as I've gone around to these different schools, I've heard some mind-blowing stories, right? I have heard things where because it's a certain kid with certain clout and a certain parent, the whole school does not know how to deal with this child. And it disrupts an entire year of learning. One child can disrupt an entire year of learning. I have heard of schools stacking all the dysregulated children into one classroom because there's this one teacher who's willing to deal with it. Okay, the coping strategies vary so drastically, and as a whole, all school systems should keep it simple and just behave in a healthy professional manner. But one of the reasons we focus on this is because we want to protect the educational system in this country. Okay, and then we want to influence long-term growth in all individuals, not just the students, but everybody involved. We should all be growing. Now, you'll notice I use the word influence. That's what you guys have. You cannot personally change somebody. You have a small amount of influence over them. Okay? How am I influencing this person is a really good mindset to have. We're going to do a little self-assessment, okay? And this assessment is really important to do, and this will help you more than learning an entire book worth of tricks and tools, okay? This one little assessment. Number one, what are my personal morals and values? How about be clean and orderly? That's a value, right? It's a value. Now, the reason I point this out is, what are my morals and values? It is important that when we do this assessment, we would know what our morals are, like don't kill people, tell the truth. What our values are, keep things clean. By the way, a value is yours. They're somewhat based on your morals, but they don't extend to everybody. You might grow up in a family that your whole life you're told things need to be clean and orderly, and you took that on, and then you might have a brother who is absolutely disgusting in your eyes and not clean and not orderly, and you can't understand how they live that way, but guess what? They are not morally incorrect. That's just a value that they don't have, that you have. Now, here's why I point that out, because when I ask myself what my morals and values are, I judge others. We are called by God to hold people accountable for morals. Not all the values. I know that sounds wild. I know I might have some of you going, you're wrong. But there are some values out there that are yours and yours alone. And if you're judging others or you're trying to use that as something that you're stuck on, you're not going to be good at dealing with dysregulated people or angry people. Does that make sense? What are the school's morals and values? No offense, but the school's morals and values in your role as a teacher, administrator, counselor matter more than your own. I was working with somebody who's working for a particular school system in our community and a particular school whose morals and values do not match theirs. And they were becoming so angry and so dysfunctional in this school system. And they came to work with me. They came for other things. But as we were talking about this issue, we got to this talk about their morals and then the institution's morals and values. And they couldn't get unstuck with, but theirs should match mine. And I'm going, but they don't. But theirs should, but you can't function over there. And guess what? You're not going to change it. And so it is really important that you understand your institution's morals and values. Now, here's where that plays a role in dysregulation and de-escalating. My mindset of being frustrated that I'm in a system that I don't agree with, or I can't get people to get on board with my morals and values, will set me up for failure. I will have a brewing resentment that makes it difficult for me to be the calm in people's storm. What policies and boundaries already exist, I don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel. You guys shouldn't be doing a lot of the work that you think you need to do when it comes to dysregulated children. I have worked with so many schools where the individuals had no clue that there were certain policies in place and things that they should be able to do because nobody was talking about them following through with them or teaching them, but they were right there in some sort of right? They were somewhere. And then what is the current culture of my school? The culture is going to change every year. If I'm not honest about the culture, I'm pining for the culture that I had a few years ago. I am going to become resentful, and I'm not going to be good at being the calm in people's storm. You must become flexible. You must understand the current culture in the system and institution that you have chosen to work for, because it's what? A job. That's a part of your job. They should write that in all the handbooks. Adapt to the current culture, let go of last year's. The culture should not dictate how you deal with dysregulation, though. Dealing with dysregulation becomes a part of the job and a part of your role, not a reaction to emotions and culture. Culture is all about emotions and adaptability and feelings and personalities and everything, but that shouldn't be how you are reacting, okay? And we'll get a little more into that. We've got about, I think, 20 of you in here, and you are all different, I guarantee it, okay? What kind of adult am I in a crisis? Now, I say adult. I didn't say person. I'm reminding you, you are a type of person called an adult. And if you have been acting like a little person in crisis moments, my card is in there. Please call us. I will make room for you because you are a part of a system I love. Okay? But what kind of person am I in crisis? Am I a reactor? That's me. Am I egocentric? Okay? Nobody likes to admit to that one. Am I fearful or lacking confidence? Am I proactive and address behaviors early? Am I avoidant until it's too late? And those are the ones I have you think about. There's more. We can make a huge list there. But I think these, you can be combinations of them, but you probably lean more towards one than the other. I told you my daughter goes to Salem, and I'm going to use a couple of names. I'll probably get in trouble someday, but I use these names because I admire these two people. My daughter has this teacher. Her name's Mrs. Cree, and she is awesome. And she is more passive and lighthearted. And I volunteer in that classroom every week. And I admire the way she deals with crisis and temper tantrums and everything. And there's this Mrs. Beckham, and she used to be a cop, and she is awesome, and she scares the heck out of me. Like, when I got to talk to her, I got to think about it all night, and I'm like, ugh. But oh my gosh, she scares me. They have two totally different personalities, but they, in my opinion, are brilliant at dealing with crisis in two very different ways. But they rely on some of the same principles, okay? So you take Mrs. Cree, and I've watched this unfold. You have a dysregulated child. At first, it seems like she's just letting it go and not going to deal with it. But she has this way of addressing it in her personality, and it works. And I've watched things that are going to turn into crisis, not turn into crisis, and it is one of the best managed kindergarten rooms that I've ever seen. And I have firsthand experience. I volunteer for as much as I can. I'm like in there watching this. And sometimes I'm going, oh, in my head, I'm going, you gotta. And then I sit back and I watch, and it's brilliant. She's not avoidant. She's more passive than my personality, but she has a very good understanding of her own personality, and she can stand up, she can confront, and she does it in a way that works. Does that make sense? And then you got Miss Beckham. When there's a crisis, she can give you a look, and it works. Okay? But they are both willing to confront, and they both have this side to them that is compassionate. They both do a really good job of focusing on what they can control and letting go of the rest. Now, seemingly, it seems like Mrs. Beckham can control more than Mrs. Curry, but I don't think so. It's just they know and are aware of themselves and their personalities, and they spread love, compassion, sternness, confidence, crisis management, de-escalation in a way that I admire. So, I say that because as you think about who you are in crisis, I don't want you to think that you have to change, but some of you might have to admit that you need help and you do need to change, right? Some of you are not dealing with crisis well, and there's some work that you need to do. But again, it's not about your personality changing. It's being aware of your personality and knowing what will work for you. I don't want somebody who's a little more passive becoming this great confronter and using language that I might use. I can confront in a really big way and then bring people down, right? And not all my therapists can kind of like do that same. I don't want them to be a therapist like me, but we want to operate on the same principles that work. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody willing to admit out loud what they identify with on here? That proactive and addressing behaviors early is something that we should all be folding. We can all achieve that regardless of your personality. My personality, I'm a confronter, right? I'm blunt. But that's not going to go over well if I haven't been proactive and laid some foundations. I'll never forget, I had my therapy, what we do in my center is we record some of our sessions and we listen to them for learning, right? And this has happened many times, but I can remember one specific time that one of my associates was listening to one of my sessions, and I had confronted a client. And I had confronted them big, right? And the therapist said that they had gotten ill, like they had felt ill listening to the session, and they couldn't believe how it turned out because they said, you took me on a roller coaster, and I can't believe how it turned out because I was so worried. I was expecting them to run out. And we talked about how there's a whole foundation of trust and proactiveness. It wasn't just that confrontation in that moment. There's a rapport built. And they said that it was like a movie. They were so relieved and so exhausted listening to my session. And they couldn't believe it. They said, I don't know that I could ever do it that way and that I could get there. And I said, I don't want you to because that isn't your personality. And in therapy, we utilize our personality, just like you guys. We've got to be honest about our personality while we practice research-based theory. As a school administrator or teacher, you got to know what your job is first, then know what your personality is, and mend and meld and put the two together. And then you build this foundation for being able to deal with dysregulation. Make sense? Okay, and confrontation. Is anybody an avoider until it's too late? The avoiders, when people are avoidant until it's too late, sometimes it's a confidence thing, sometimes it's an I don't know what to do thing. But what happens is a lot of people who avoid, they imagine that you have to become big to confront or to address. You don't. Right? Sometimes things, you go beat around the bush and you address it over here in the background. We've got this whole thing where we're supposed to confront things head on with certain people. Guess what? Sometimes you got to admit, I'm not confronting that person head on, but I'm going to go deal with it over here this way. And you lay a foundation and you figure out, you have that, again, discernment. Discernment is really important. If you don't feel like you have good discernment, you need to find a mentor. You need to find somebody who can help you figure out the system. And if you're a brand new teacher, you guys are all pretty well-skilled and in it, right? Sometimes I'm talking to brand new teachers. Brand new teachers, guess what? They have no discernment. I don't care if they were like the best hire that year. They have no discernment. Their discernment should be, I need a mentor who I know is figuring this out well, okay? Anybody Egocentric. I never get hands for this one. I think I've only had one dude go, that's me. I'm kind of a jerk. But look, I won't make you raise your hand, but sometimes your ego gets away from you for years and you don't realize it. And you can tell by kind of looking around at, it's interesting because sometimes the egocentric person has a lot of people who like them because they bounce from being really permissive to totally egocentric. It's really interesting. And they're either really angry or really permissive, right? That's a sign. You might be falling into that if a lot of the time you're judging, your internal dialogue is judgment. But the issue with the egocentric crisis dealer withers is that they don't recognize it until it smacks them right in the forehead. And if that might be you, there's some subtle signs that it might be you, right? And again, a big sign is that it's a lot of times I have a lot of people that really, really like me, and then a bunch of people who totally avoid me. And then once I'm done with somebody, they're done with me and we're out. Like that's a sign that that's going on. We want to get into understanding the child's personality and patterns. If you're in the education system, you are probably naturally good at, otherwise I don't think you would have been drawn to the profession, because it's not like people are drawn to the education profession anymore because they get to be the tyrants of their classrooms, because you guys get a lot of flack from a lot of people. You don't control very much anymore, and we don't attract in the education system those kind of like, I get to be the boss type people. Really, you're attracted most likely because you have a gift at understanding children and you have a calling to better their lives. Understanding the child's personality and patterns needs to take place. When do we start that pursuit? Right away. Sometimes before they even come into their classroom. What I noticed with school systems is you guys talk about certain kids, and it's always the really good and the really bad a lot. Everybody knows all about certain students, but I challenge as a school system to start early. In fact, I think that school systems should start writing some of these things down in kids' files from the beginning to pass on. Number one, identify triggers early. Your kids are triggered by certain things. They haven't had the experience, the therapy, the talks yet to be aware of their own triggers, right? Why not take the time, and it doesn't take much time, right? That's how much time you write down to track and understand some of these kids' triggers. I talk about my child a lot because she's 6, she's cute, love her to death. I know a lot of her triggers. No, she is one of the healthiest, can't wait to get to class, love school type people, but there is a way to trigger some meltdown and I'll call it neediness in her. And so this is why I'm going to talk about a stark trigger and then this more subtle trigger. If I take her to class and I do oh, I love you, I'm going to miss you, she becomes a little more attached and a little less able to go. And I might trigger her neediness. But if I go in there and I take her to school and we do a little goofy dance and I have her go put her backpack up and I give her a 5 and I go, hey, back up and give me a running, jumping hug, and I'm goofy with her, she forgets about me very quickly. Okay, now that's a really subtle trigger, and it's not as subtle in dysregulation, but she has this trigger for 2 types of way of going into the classroom. I think that's important for us all to notice in kids because that starts her day off. In fact, don't judge me, sometimes I don't get out of the car. I'm like, peace, bye, and she loves it, and she goes running to class, and I know already what mornings I better not get out of the car. Okay? And so you're not going to get that in depth with all your students, but start noticing their triggers. There are some kids who are triggered by certain things that you can't avoid and you can't do anything about, but we should still make note about it. Because down the road, we might be able to create a plan that is real simple and not going to get in the way of the functioning of other children that can be passed on to the next teacher in that system, especially in a system like ours where, this is private. We want to keep families in the mix all through 8th grade, all through high school. Identify triggers, understand their triggers early on. You're going to notice, I guarantee you will notice, even if they don't have a full-blown meltdown, if you are keeping an eye on it, you'll see most of the kids' triggers within the first month or two of school, and they aren't going to change all that much. And some of them are going to kind of be weird and blow your mind. I'm not kidding when I tell you, it might be that they have to use a blue scissor. Now that's something where I'm not going to push that. Give them the darn purple scissors. It might be math, though. A trigger might be math, right? You can't just say you don't get to do math, but we can be aware and we can situate things like where they sit, how we call them out. If anxious, okay, if you notice that a child has a more anxious personality, you are not their therapist. Please do not try to fix their anxiousness. I don't care if the parent comes to you and says, because you're the counselor, and they say, hey, you need to fix my child's anxiousness. You are not there to do that. You're there to walk alongside their anxiousness. But you also don't want to accommodate in a way that perpetuates it. See the balance? But if anxious, stay close and speak with very few words. Parents, school staff, school administrators know what you guys and me, we're all terrible at? Using very few words. You don't need to talk that much, you guys. And it's going to be really important with the anxious type of child. If somebody's reactive, like that really reactive child, that I can think of a few in my daughter's class, you want to give them tasks that aren't going to blow up the classroom. You don't want to put them in authority positions. That's different. I'll never forget, I was working with a particular institution, school institution, and one of the brilliant things that they were doing, not brilliant, I'm saying that sarcastically, was they were putting the problem children in charge. And I'm thinking, this is a mess. This isn't working. These children are still reactive and a problem. And I think what was going on with that system that I was trying to work with, I think they were misconstruing giving tasks that make a child feel empowered with giving them authority. Please don't give a child who's reactive, inattentive, and a problem the position of authority. But you do want to be very subtle and keep them in constant, purposeful tasks that are achievable. Does that make sense? That is dealing with their dysregulation before they become dysregulated. You have somebody who's often getting dysregulated, often inattentive, often causing problems, poking people. This is going to be really technical terms. I hope you guys understand it. Keep them busy. If you have that withdrawn child who's kind of a self-critic, Do not try to fix them. I know your instinct is going to be to say, you're so good, you're so powerful, right? You guys ever seen these things on the internet where parents have their child sit in front of the mirror every single day saying, I'm powerful, I'm this, I'm that. That's really cool and all for social media. But you take a child like this, you're doing more damage than you are good. Look, they have a journey to figure out. And right now, they're withdrawn. They're a self-critic. Don't fix it. Listen, be silent often, and show gestures of support. Support meaning I'm walking alongside you. I'm not trying to fix you. I've worked with clients who are just like this, and now they're older or maybe even adults. And the message they inadvertently received about their personality and struggle was that they were wrong. That they shouldn't have been like that they needed to change. Not that they weren't finished developing into the personality that they were going to have that was going to work for them, but that they needed to change it. And so inadvertently in trying to fix them, you might be doing damage and getting in the way of their natural process of becoming an amazing human being. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. They still need to do the work. They still need to participate. You'll notice I didn't say don't have them participate because they might get frustrated, sad, or withdrawn. I didn't say that. You still keep the boundaries. You still have expectations of them that are reasonable. You're just trying to fix them. Do you see the difference? Building connection through small personal interactions. Now, every one of us is really good at that with the kids that we connect with. All right, there are some kids, again, my daughter, she's amazing. Let me tell you, she's easy to connect with. She will tell you how cool you are, how good you are. She makes you feel good. There are other kids in her class that are really difficult to connect with because they're off-putting. Sometimes kind of mean. But if I'm not taking it personally, I give them the same chance at those little personal interactions. You know, like when you have something special with somebody, right? You got like the little knuckles or just that little thing that's special. Some of your kids who are more prone to dysregulation and off-putting, the ones who kind of bug you, that's one thing as an administrator, teacher, and educator that you need to know is when you are bugged by a child. That is the child you're not going to be good at helping de-escalate. That is the child that you're going to take it personally with. That's the child you need cool little things like your own little things. It's easy with the kids that are easy and pleasant to be around. But you have a job. Your job is to make sure that everybody can learn and they're more open to learning, which means you have those little handshakes, those little gestures, those little special things that you say to each other, especially with the kids that make you go, ugh. And you know you have them. I know you're not supposed to say that, but you have kids that make you go, ugh. And I'm going to say this, don't over-identify with the kids that make you feel good, that you connect with, that you click with. One of the most damaging things for a child is to watch how the adults, not just the kids around them, but the adults click with other kids and not them. It is your job to tampen that down. It is your job not to participate in that. We talk about bullying all the time, don't we? Everybody knows about bullying. We have I know somebody that makes like 10 times the amount of money I do doing bullying in schools, and his program is not good. But know what he doesn't address is the fact that bullying is that much of the problem in terms of doing damage to kids. Being rejected, left out, and not noticed is a way bigger problem. Bullying gets a lot of attention, a lot of resources, and a lot of help, but you have a kid who silently bugged the heck out of a lot of people and never had a teacher click with him. He's going to become dysregulated in a way that can't be helped. What's that like to hear? You cannot fix their social situation at school, and I'm not telling you to. But educators don't have to participate in the cliques, and you shouldn't. That is one thing that I do see in the private school systems quite a bit. And it's good intention. It's not something, it's just that conversation is not happening. And when I bring it up, what do you think the average adult does? They deny it. They're in denial of it. I've seen school systems where you've got parents, kids, and teachers clicking with a select few, giving a lot of attention, and not even realizing that an entire system is ignoring some kids that really need to be paid attention to. It's natural. Why do I bring this up in dysregulation seminar? Because it plays a huge role. That one connection, that one time that was unexpected in a child who's left out might prevent an absolute meltdown, because sometimes our kids are melting down and become dysregulated, chaotic, damaged, violent, because they get a case of what's called the efforts. Okay? We can't prevent it totally, but we can make a plan. We can be purposeful. Make sense? And so that building connection through small personal interactions is really important, and it is really easy, again, with kids you click with. It is really difficult with odd, awkward, mean, negative kids. But if it's a part of your job, and you can justify it being a part of your job, because when you do that, it makes educating them much easier. With that, I want you guys to clarify your role. Okay? What are you protecting in your role? Well, you're becoming good at de-escalation because you are protecting the school environment. You're protecting all the students. You're protecting the values and morals and standards of that school system. And you are protecting your ability to provide an education, because that is your job. But shifting from an emotional response to problem solving, I'm going to give you 3 steps, okay? One is rely on the plan. For example, when a child escalates, do not reason or argue. Calmly direct others, call for help if needed, and follow boundaries. Okay? What do we often do? We want to sit there and reason with the child and take care of the child instead of calmly directing others. Isn't it interesting that we focus on the problem child more than we focus on all the other kids? Your plan, if you're an educator, is how do I get to educating the other kids, not how do I solve this problem right here. Okay? Sometimes you've got to focus on everybody else while the gorilla is going nuts over here. Step 2, rely on boundaries. Okay? A disruptive child may need to leave the room. If they refuse, shift the attention to the compliant students and ask somebody else for assistance. Right? Again, what gets in the way is, but I'm supposed to punish and take care of this child right here, instead of my first goal is to educate everybody. Focus on the true problem. Do not confuse chaos and control with discipline. If learning is being disrupted, focus on restoring their learning environment. So basically, I just gave you 3 steps to remember what your role is. Make sense? Okay. Now, boundary setting. Everybody, what are boundaries? Somebody give me an example of what a boundary is. What we often do is we mistake boundaries for punishment and reward. Boundaries I control. Boundary is something that you around me do not control. If you're yelling at me, I will not engage with you. That is a boundary. Why is that a boundary? Because I don't need you to follow. If you yell, you must leave the classroom, is not a boundary. That can be a rule, a hope. But I am not going to encourage you guys to make it a boundary, because to make it a boundary, you'd have control, and you need to make sere they're smaller than you. Then you wrap them up like this, and you walk them out of the classroom, and then you've got to like knock them out so they don't run back in. And you can't do that anymore. We haven't been able to do that since like the 80s. A boundary, you ask yourself, number 1, what do I control? What am I struggling to let go of? What boundaries already exist? Do I understand the school system's support and resources? Am I relying on my own brilliance or the system that is in place? In order to set healthy boundaries, I must know what I control. I must know what I can follow through with, and why am I setting? What am I protecting? That's the one thing people forget, is they think boundaries is to control other people. It's not. It's to protect yourself, your personhood, your self-esteem, your morals, your values, your belongings. It's to protect yourself. And if I get into, I'm going to set boundaries that teach them a lesson, I am going to fail miserably at boundaries. A teacher struggling with an aggressive student had to reframe her approach. Instead of focusing solely on the problem student, she began nurturing the rest of the class, creating a more balanced environment. As her energy shifted, the disruptive behavior reduced. I give that example because that's what happens a lot of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. I can set a boundary and the child ramps up and becomes more terrible. That's the hope, and that's what often happens. A boundary is protective. I'm going to protect the education environment the best that I can, okay? I'm not going to participate in people cussing me out and yelling at me, but I also can't stop them. All I can do is choose not to participate, or my boundary might be, I call Mrs. Beckham. I don't know, right? And that's relying on the systems in place. Healthy boundaries are protective and not about changing. Go home with that. Make sure you go home with that. Otherwise, your boundaries are not going to be used for de-escalation. They are going to cause escalation and resentment and more anger in you and more anger in the people that you're dealing with. I'm in a really cool position in my job because I don't work with anybody I don't want to work with because, but you guys may not have a choice, but you do have a choice as to how you work with them. If I go into it trying to work with them like I work with somebody I get along with, then I'm setting myself up for frustration and failure. Again, remember your professional stance. Remember your job. I don't have to have long conversations, go to lunch with you, and listen to you while you do whatever it is that you do. And I'm also not going to take personally you attacking me. I know that somebody can affect your job unfairly, but that's a part of the gig in anything. I've been attacked unfairly. I've been accused in my life of things that I didn't do. It is what it is. That's a part of life. Get over it. Don't take it personally. If you're a good educator, you'll get another job, you'll get another position. This is a season. One of the things you can do is remember this is a season and you won't have to deal with this person forever. I want to get through how to interact with a dysregulated child. I know we only have a few minutes. I'm going to get out of here on time. So I'm going to blow through these real quick, okay? What not to do. No intense conversations. You shouldn't be having intense conversations with anybody unless you've built that foundation anyways, okay? Don't address the issue first, please. You're going to want to. Do not lecture or moralize. Avoid frantic energy. Don't fully disengage, okay, or ignore. You got to kind of like deal with them. So you don't want to turn their back on them because that's actually triggering for people. It's this balance of, well, I'm not participating. Cool, calm, collected. What to do? Listen more, talk less. Observe your surrounding for clues. It is so interesting. We get so hyper-focused on the problem in front of us, we don't realize there might be answers all around here, right? There might be so many other distractions or things that you can implement. And so if you get hyper-focused, you will not see them. Observe your surroundings. Focus on what is real, not what should be. That it should be this way gets in the way of so many ways to problem solve. Reassure and guide other students. I've said that's the second time I'm addressing that. Reassure and guide the other students. Why does the problem child right now deserve all your attention? Who made that rule? Reflect and summarize what the child is feeling. Validate emotions and experiences. Those two things don't get done in the moment, though, guys. It's insanity if you try to do that in the moment. I've had so many parents and educators come to me and say, you know, I tried the I feel thing and they just yelled at me. Well, yeah, you were trying to do it in the middle of them melting down. They weren't reasonable. That was a pretty dumb time to talk to them about anything. You could have given them exactly what they wanted and they would have gotten mad at you. I'm going to read this truth and the bottom line, okay? You may not be able to de-escalate every child, but you can avoid escalating things further. You must, if you do anything today, write down the things that you control and that you don't control in every situation, and get together with somebody else so that they can add to your list. Focus on your own regulation first. You must become an expert at being a professional in an educator role. Emotional outbursts usually end faster than expected, especially if you don't get involved. Isn't it interesting? We're so afraid of temper tantrums, but temper tantrums are exhausting. The average child goes like a few minutes if you don't intervene. I get parents all the time asking me, what should I do in a temper tantrum? Run? Like, go? I don't do nothing. And they're mind blown when they finally do that and they realize, that worked. I know, it's exhausting. Your kids can't keep it up forever. Think of the dysregulated moments like a gorilla pounding in its cage. You do not want to get in the cage with that gorilla, okay? Stay calm and let it pass and manage the things that you can control around it. That mindset isn't easy. We really want to touch that hot cast iron pan to take care of it. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Do we have any questions or thoughts? I threw so much information at you, I know, and I probably didn't throw enough at you. I'm sure there's still things you want to address, but who has questions or thoughts as we close here? And it's, you have to get out of your own ego and in your own way to talk about this stuff. I agree. So we'll close real quick, and I'm going to just pray over you guys. Lord, thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for just bringing hearts together who want to do better, who want to influence others to do better in changing the lives of the young children that we influence. And I just ask that you take my words today and highlight anything that should be a big part of the next step of everybody's journey here today. And I ask that you make everybody here influential in their school systems that they're going back to. In your name we pray, amen. All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you.